All right, good morning, everybody. Let's talk the Cup Series picks for Las Vegas. Now that the race, I should say qualifying is done, we kind of have a better understanding of what players we want to go to today. Hopefully, you guys did well yesterday with the Xfinity Series. It was a pretty good race for us. It was cool to see Josh Berry win and lock himself into the championship four. So it'll be interesting again to see today if one of those 8 playoff drivers will win to get locked into the Phoenix race. We already did kind of an initial preview thoughts video earlier in the week. So if you wanted to go back and watch that, you can. But most likely now that qualifying is done, I feel like this is the video that a lot of you have been waiting for. So all the drivers in blue over here are going to be playoff drivers, just so you're aware. But looking at the grid today, you got Hamlin, Elliott, Bell, Larson, and Reddick. One thing I will say before we dive into this is might be a good idea to play a little bit light today. We've been trying to play a little bit light all season just with the unpredictability, with tire issues, the next gen issues. My fear is today's going to be another one of those races where every 30, 35 laps we're having tire issues. You never really know who it's going to be in the field. Hopefully that isn't the case. Hopefully I'm wrong. But it just feels like any of these drivers could have an issue at any point that necessarily isn't their fault. So it's hard to predict that unpredictability, except for just predicting everyone to potentially have an issue. So Hamlin's going to be really high owned. He's more of a place differential play who should be a factor later in this race. So he starts super deep in the field. He's the most expensive driver. He's going to be very high owned. He's going to be a great cash games options. I think a strong GPP option as well. Just know he's going to carry a lot of ownership. I think it's very easy for him to score well today. But, a lot of people are going to be starting their lineups with Hamlin. So maybe if you want to try to come in a little bit underweight on GPPs, I think that might be a fine option. Elliott didn't really jump out to me too much. I think he's just an interesting pivot play off of Hamlin if you're looking for another, place differential play. He's a little bit cheaper, basically starts mid-pack. He hasn't really gotten the finishes as of late on the 1.5s. However, he's still our points leader. He's been running the most consistent and probably the best out of anyone in the field. But for a DFS purpose, he's not really going to be a high interest for me. I think he's fine to have in your line. I would just, if you're going to pick between the two of them, I think Hamlin has a much better opportunity to score better than Elliott. But I don't mind the Elliott pivot for tournaments. Really cool to see Christopher Bell win on the Roval to advance to this round. It was the only way he was going to make it. We know how fast the JGR Toyotas have been. It's a little bit more of a GPP option starting 7th. His practice times weren't great, but we have to remember it is just practice. So when it actually mattered and this team had to qualify, he was able to lay down a top 10 time. He has multiple top 10 finishes on 1.5s. He is a little expensive. I think he might come in a little under-owned just based off of the place differential and the pole sitter play that we'll talk about here in a second. So I really like Christopher Bell for tournaments. I like Larson for all formats today. He is out of the playoffs, but if there's one track type this team has really performed well at, it's been at these 1.5s. He starts 14th, so he just barely missed out on that second round of qualifying. He does offer some PD upside with the ability to potentially lead laps. So I like Larson for either format. Reddick's practice times didn't look great. However, again, when it mattered, that team put down a blistering fast lap to earn the pole. We've seen Reddick perform very well on the 1.5s, usually throughout the race earlier this year. The only problem is this is usually one of the teams that is getting bit by issues. If you look at his finishes at the 1.5s, they're either, top 10, top 7, even top 5, winning, or he's DNFing. So for whatever reason, it always looks like the car in first place is having more issues than the cars right behind them. So maybe that is a disadvantage to Reddick. And if he does work out starting first, losing all that place differential is really going to hurt your line. But he probably is the most likely early lap leader in this race. Ross Chastain's probably one of my favorite plays today. Starts 11th. So again, he just missed out on the second round of qualifying. The 1.5s have been his best track type this year. He's hasn't run really great as of late, but if we look at kind of the summer stretch when everyone was talking about Chastain, these were the types of tracks that we were going to. Uh, feel pretty good about his practice times as well. They were second fastest across the board, only behind Ryan Blaney. So that only further validates and emphasizes that hopefully he has a good car. Byron, I think, is another interesting play. He's more of a GPP play, but I really like Chastain, Byron, and Blaney. I think Byron would be the pivot play off of Blaney. I think a lot of people might just look at practice times, and you'll see that Blaney was fastest at the 1, the 5, the 10, 15 lap average. The only potential issue with Blaney is he just hasn't found a way to get into victory lane. And necessarily, you don't have to get into victory lane for DFS to score well. But if you're starting fourth or third, we want you to get out front, lead some laps, run some fast laps, hopefully finish inside the top 10. I think both of these drivers have a great opportunity to do that. I just think Blaney's going to come in higher owned than Byron. So Byron might be another interesting GPP pivot off of Blaney. But like we talked about, Blaney had the fastest car across practice and qualifying, or I shouldn't say qualifying, but still had a good time in qualifying. So we know that car is fast. Really like Kyle Busch as well. I might bump him up to high. My only fear with Busch is just this. He's been so tough to play as of late. Maybe now that all the news is out there that he isn't going to be back, but that news has been there for a handful of weeks now. We still haven't really necessarily seen the finishes, but a lot of the times it's just because of these next gen issues. It isn't always necessarily, he made a mistake. Sometimes it's just things that are outside of his control. But if we look at the tracks that Busch has run well at, it's also been at these 1.5s, just like Chastain. So I really like Kyle Busch today for either format. I probably like Truex a little bit better than Busch just because of obviously place differential upside, and he comes in $200 cheaper. So I really like both Truex and Busch. Basically, all the JGR Toyotas I think are in play today. Logano is just a driver that just isn't really a target for me, but with how unpredictable and crazy this race theoretically could be, he's a driver that maybe not a lot of people are going to, and maybe he's, the driver that comes out on the positive side of the chaos today. But decent GPP option. I mean, it doesn't really stick out. He did finish second at Texas, which was the most recent 1.5 that we went to. But again, we know how crazy that race was. So just not really, for me, it's just going to be hard for him to score well starting fifth. Now, I do like Bubba Wallace. He's in the same car that he won at Kansas with, and we know how fast that car was. Now, yes, Las Vegas is a different track than Kansas, but it's a similar track type. They're both, 1.5s. I think knowing that extra tidbit of information is helpful. More of a GPP options. His practice and qualifying time suggests that he should be running inside the top 10 throughout the day. It's just kind of will be able to get inside, the top 5, pick up fast laps, maybe even, circle to the lead. Harvick's going to be another low interest for me. Just, he gives you a little bit of place differential upside, but the 1.5s just really hasn't been Stewart Haas's best tracks. I'd much rather drop down and play Chase Briscoe, who is Stewart Haas's playoff contending driver, who starts 16th and is a little bit cheaper. It looks like my notes didn't save there, so I will update that before I post this up on Twitter. But regardless, I still like Chase Briscoe. And then once we get to the 7K range, that's basically low interest for everybody. Maybe medium interest for Craigson. Maybe I can bump him up to medium. But really everyone else is I'm not getting to today. But Eric Jones, I do like Eric Jones. He had really fast times in practice. He starts in the second half of the field. He's more of a place differential option. And for me, I really want to try to target, I think, anywhere from 3 to 4 of these drivers in the 8K range and above, and then kind of come down and hopefully get my value plays in this 6K range or potentially the 5K range too, depending on what four drivers you select. So Kozlowski is a decent place differential option. I would just much rather go to Eric Jones and or Eric Almirola, who had better times in practice. Not really going to get to Gibbs today. AJ Allmendinger really liked his car. Both Colleague cars really liked their cars. He starts 21st. I'd much rather probably pay down for Justin Haley, who starts even further back and is cheaper and who's actually been one of the best drivers as of late. But I'd like AJ Allmendinger if, for tournaments. McDowell never seems to jump out on paper as, hey, this is a guy you need up in your line, but every single week he finds a way to impress and finish well. So even though he starts 15th, I think, he could finish anywhere from 12th to, probably 18th today. Stenhouse, man, I might bump him down to medium, but he starts deep. He's only $6,000, and we know the 1.5s are where this team has the speed where they can run well. It's just, can they avoid tire issues? Can they avoid mechanical issues? Can they just stay on the track? That's all you really need to do, and then he should have a good day. I'm not going to get to Custer or Burton or really Castle, McLeod, Ware, or Gailey. I think those drivers are viable to a certain extent if you predict a race that has a lot of chaos and they're just going to run slow in the back and not have these issues. But from a pure upside standpoint alone, I really like Justin Haley and Ty Dillon. We've seen Haley run really well as of late. He really likes his car. Super excited for the race today. Ty Dillon starts really deep in the field. He basically always finishes around 20th or so. That'll work out perfectly, for his price tag. And I think Todd Gilliland's probably going to get a lot of ownership starting 35th. I think he's a decent punt play too. I just think Justin Haley and Ty Dillon have a better finishing potential than Gilliland. So Haley and Dillon would be my favorite punt plays. And then, it's really just trying to, I think, round out your line or build your line with probably four of these drivers up here that you feel the most confident with, or potentially three of them, depending how heavy on the top range that you go. Try to keep in mind of those 3 to 4 drivers that you're grabbing. Try to be mindful and play that narrative out in your head of, okay, I'm going to draft Hamlin. He starts 31st. And then, okay, if I'm drafting Hamlin, who starts deeper in the field, who's a driver I can draft who starts closer to the front of the field that hopefully will lead the bulk of stage one? Okay, I'm going to draft Byron. I think Byron's going to be that early lap leader. So, maybe I'll pair Byron with Hamlin. And I think Larson has one of the best cars today. So then I'm going to play Larson. And I'm also going to play, Truex because he's another place differential play. Like, try to figure out how those 3 to 4 drivers work with one another and then figure out, what value plays you can grab after kind of building out that narrative in your head. So hopefully that helped. I think the race is at 3:00 Eastern time, I want to say today. So plenty of time to build lineups, especially after the NFL kickoff, starts at 1:00. So good luck today, everybody. If this has been helpful, leaving a like on the video is always appreciated. Hitting the subscribe button is also appreciated. We're so close to the 600 mark on YouTube. We're only literally a handful away. And then we'll post this up on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. But best of luck, everybody, today, and we'll catch you next week.